Empire. Here we are in a really busy, really wacky, and uncertain week in the NFL. What's up? This is Mike Jones, and this is the Football Jones Podcast. Thanks for coming back for another episode. You can read me at usatoday.com. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @ByMikeJones. And like I said, a lot going on. The CBA was passed. There will not be a work stoppage. And so we're going to dissect all of that with Lorenzo Alexander, member of the executive committee for the NFL Players Association. Also going to talk to him. Like I said, this is a weird week because business is going to roll on, but not quite as usual because of the coronavirus. We've got draft visits have been canceled. Teams have closed facilities. A lot of people are working from home. And now free agent visits are probably not going to take place. There's a lot of strange restrictions that teams are having to adapt to as they try to stay safe, as they try to keep their employers and their employees healthy. And so I couldn't think of anybody better than Lorenzo Alexander to talk about the CBA and also give us a glimpse into just kind of how the coronavirus is hampering things and what teams have to do to kind of work around that. So we're going to talk to him right now. All right, and now glad to have back my buddy Lorenzo Alexander, who hasn't been able to really enjoy retirement life yet very much because you've been battling and working so hard on this CBA stuff. But Lorenzo, how you doing, man?
I'm doing real well. Out here in Phoenix. This is where we decided to set up shop after playing in the NFL, and so just having enjoying my time and the extra time on my hands, hanging with the kids. You know, obviously we have the coronavirus right now, and their school has been canceled, and so really just trying to use this time to spend with them. You know, whether we're doing homeschooling in a sense, going outside and playing basketball, really just trying to make this as much as a positive as we can.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a weird time. And I keep on expecting to wake up and be like it was a wacky dream or something like that. But
right.
Unfortunately, no. Well, look, I wanted to talk to you about the CBA being, I guess them ratifying the CBA where it was a narrow margin. Were you surprised by that outcome, or was it kind of how you thought it was going to be?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be exactly how it turned out. Very narrow. I don't think I thought it was going to be 60 votes close, but I knew it was going to be a reflection of leadership. And every vote that we had from the EC on down was very contentious in a close vote. And so usually our membership is a great reflection of our leadership because that's where our members come from. It's straight out of the locker room. And so I wasn't surprised in one bit, but I was shocked that 500 guys chose not to vote. I thought that number would be significantly lower.
Gotcha. Why do you think that was?
You know what? Kind of thinking about it, I really just think it is a reflection of our society. I mean, I think oftentimes people try to separate athletes out of society, but we are members. And if you go to any or do any type of study on elections, general elections for president or local elections, there's always a faction of people that decide not to vote for whatever reason that may be. They don't think their voice is going to be heard. They don't think it matters. They don't care. They decide just not to vote because they don't want to put their name on it, or just ignorance in some sort of fashion. And so I don't know where guys fail in that, or the majority of guys, but that is definitely something when we come to this point again at some point that we need to make sure that we speak to.
Gotcha. What do you do? Because you can't really make guys. I mean, I remember a couple years ago being in the Redskins locker room, and I was sitting there with D Hall, and one of the younger defensive backs, actually, he asked D-Hall a question. D-Hall said, well, it's in the CBA. You got to look it up. And the guy said, what's the CBA? And he'd been in the league for 2-3 years. And it's just like, wow. But what do you do in that case to try to, educate and inform and impress on guys more?
I think we've grown in a sense as far as the PA is trying to have more touch points. And so even at like the combine every year, you at least heard of what the CBA is because they present to every single person that participates in that event. Obviously, everybody's not invited to that though. So some people slip through the cracks. Right. We had meetings. And so I can see how maybe a young guy could get to that point. And that's why it's really a holistic approach from the club meetings that we have, the combine, veterans in the locker room talking about it, reaching out to guys as issues come up. And when they see a guy or identify a guy who's really, kind of in the dark on some issues, trying to educate them and push them, just to the information so that they can educate themselves and really at the end of the day, help themselves be informed, because a lot of players get upset about certain things they don't know about. It's in the CBA, but they may come up and they get tagged or restricted in some sort of way, or maybe some obscure rule that nobody knows about. And so that's something that I've kind of learned over the years. I'm probably not where I need to be, but I've gotten a lot better throughout my career. But that's kind of the hard part, because as soon as you get in, for most guys, you're on your way out.
Yeah, exactly. So what did you think of this deal? I felt like there was a lot of good in there, but it wasn't perfect. But I felt like it was a step, towards, and maybe next time you guys will get that 50-50 split and everything, but I'm not as deeply in it. So I would like to hear from you as we try to learn this type of thing.
Yeah, I think you characterized it very well, that there was some good, but some things in there that you just, it kind of sits you kind of wrong. And so from a bird's eye view, I think if you were to analyze our CBA for what it is and really understand it holistically, I think it was, for the majority and the broader membership, I think it was a very good deal. And I think a lot of that has stemmed just from our revenue share shifting to 48%. So getting that additional that revenue percentage, and then also locking it in on an annual basis of 48%, versus in the last deal, it was an average of 47% over the life of 10 years. And so it started up higher at 48% when the revenue was lower. And then as the revenue grew, our percentage dropped because they only had to average 47% over that 10-year span. And so I think we missed out on some dollars on the back end of the deal because of that percentage shift and how the league manipulated it. And so I think that was a great push for us, and then which allowed us to increase minimums, increase benefits, allowed us to go back and do some pension parity for everybody that played before 2012 and moving them up to 550. And so there was a lot of good things there, but we weren't able to get tags removed. We weren't able to guarantee contracts that some people wanted to do. We weren't able to get the 50-50 split, even though we moved in a positive direction. And so there's things throughout it. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Social Security offset and benefits. There will be, families impacted by this deal who will have an offset now if they have Social Security and also get disability through the NFL, which will suck for those families. And so hopefully we can continue to fight for them and maybe get that amended and grandfather some of those families in. But yeah, I think big picture, it's a good deal. And on some individual items, I don't think the deal is where it should be at, or and possibly where we could have probably pushed it to.
Gotcha. So, for us on the outside, is it now okay? Everybody sits back and you're all done, or what kind of work do you guys have more work to do on it, more discussions and things like that?
The CBA is almost a living, breathing document, and so the work is never done. I think on the front end of it, making sure that we continually fight for our men, because as they always do, the league tries to find ways to manipulate the deal into their favor, or because all the legal language and how they interpret it. So we have to continue to work in that essence to make sure that we protect what we gain and maximize the positive aspects of this deal. Much like the drug policy in the last deal, where it was kind of amended after the deal was signed, I think we have to continue to work in the benefits realm, making sure that benefits that we negotiated for and that players fought for, that when it comes to a point in my career when I retire and I've suffered a significant amount of injuries, when I decide to go get evaluated, there shouldn't be all this red tape in a process that's set up to frustrate a guy, to deter him from continuing to fight for a benefit that we essentially as a PA negotiated for. And I think those are the kind of like the horror stories that you hear coming out, kind of now, as far as, getting workers' comp or getting line of duty or trying to get TMP, and coming up with a process that is, I think, identifying and honoring people's sacrifice that they endured while playing this game, and not making it come across as like you're giving me something for free when you're not.
Gotcha. Now, the drug policy thing was big. What was your take on that? And do you feel like that it's going to be something that guys are still going to, remain vigilant, remain responsible on, or is it kind of, how do you view that? Because I guess it could go one way or the other.
Obviously, the drug policy was a shift, especially when you're dealing with marijuana. As far as leadership was concerned, that was never a big item that we wanted to negotiate over. I think the owners felt, especially the way our society has shifted on just a perception of what marijuana, that it made sense to do something there. And so that was more of a collective thing, as far as moving it more from a punitive issue to more of a rehabilitative. So if you get drug tested and you come up and you pop and you fail, you more than likely have a significant issue with marijuana. You may be abusing it versus being a casual smoker of marijuana. And so I think that was just a great shift, just based on where our culture is in our society, and then also making sure it wasn't to punish guys, but if guys have a problem, to be able to identify it and then help them make a shift in whatever it may be that may be contributing to that addiction.
Gotcha. Now, I've talked to some guys who say that they'd rather smoke weed to help ease with pain and things like that than they would pop pills. Do you think that from that regard that this is good in that area?
Right. And I think that's what, kind of what I'm talking to, because now you can and I don't smoke, so I don't have a lot of knowledge on it. And so I know you could probably be a casual smoker to deal with some of the issues you're talking about, and the nanogram limits have been raised so high that if you do that, you should be okay. And so, But I'm not a doctor and I can't guarantee that, but I know, but if you, doing it all day, every day, at practice, at work, when you get home, you probably have a real issue. It's not for pain, it's for some other underlying issue that you may be unaware of.
Right. So the 17-game season had a lot of, contention. There were some guys who thought maybe they could get some of the increase that you guys got without having doing the 17th game. The owners, from what I gather, were like, no, they were married to that. What did you think of that? And then how do you guys just kind of handle taking care of your bodies and making sure that that wear and tear doesn't pile up as it possibly could?
I guess it's kind of a loaded question. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective and my viewpoint, from the start, I think we were initially against adding more games because of obviously the wear and tear, and having perspective of what games do to your body. Obviously, during the negotiations, that changed as far as listening to a proposal that included 17 games and what that could do as far as, at the end of the day, it always comes back to money and whether or not they are making enough. Because I think a lot of guys felt that we were entitled or had earned a share of 50% based on 16 games. And so that's why a lot of people are just kind of are frustrated and was disappointed because of the 17th game, and why you got a lot of no votes based on that. But we were able to walk back some some things in training camp as far as going from 27 practices to 16 practices. That hopefully will help. I know it helped me, because I played in the 2006 deal when I had padded practices 2-a-days and
Right.
then had pads through week 17. With old school coaches like Joe Gibbs, and so being able to walk that back significantly throughout my career helped me extend it. And I think also having this reduction in training camp and treat more people like almost like a 10-year vet, because essentially what we're doing when you're taking these pads off, that you'll be able to extend careers and people will possibly feel fresher at the end of seasons.
Gotcha. Now the one thing about the expanded playoff things, I like that more teams get the opportunity, but I don't like the guys, only one conference team gets a bye. That's like a significant advantage, right?
It is a significant, because most of those teams normally win it, right? The 1 or 2 seed. Rarely do you get a team in the wild card that finds its way to winning the championship, and that's really because they're not as fresh. I mean, that's why those bye weeks are so precious for guys, because it allows you to mentally and physically recharge your body. And that was also another reason, because you have guys that are in the playoffs every single year, and certain guys are normally fighting for that 1 or 2 spot. And so in their mind, that you are really adding. It really became an 18-game season in their mind, because now if they don't get that 1 spot, you're adding 2 more playoff games or 2 more games to their schedule. And that's why it was, so unique in a guy's perspective, because for me, I'm not in the playoffs every year. So I'm like, it may not even matter to me on a year-to-year basis. But some of the quarterbacks, especially the elite ones, they're in there every single year. So their teams have to endure that if they're not the 1 seed. And so it's definitely going to be different. It's definitely going to give that team, I think, an additional advantage, because they are getting a bye week. And at the end of the year, it's about who's playing best, but a lot of times it's who's freshest, who feels good, whose body feels well enough to go out there and play the closest to their best.
Gotcha. Now, Zoe, you went through the lockout. And I remember back then you guys practicing at George Mason or Tuscarora High School, or trying to doing your off-season work and trying to, get some work in. So there won't be any of that this year. So because you guys don't have to worry about that, do you think that ultimately this is a win?
I think anytime you have, and I say certainty, we got this whole coronavirus that's going to obviously impact the off season and the guys being able to work out and free agency and all that, because we're trying to put obviously our country's safety first. So that's going to impact it. But I think having the certainty that you're going to get paid, your family's going to be taken care of, you still have your benefits. Those are all positive things, because I think a lot of guys, whether they want to admit it or not knowing what was past 2021,
right,
can be a fearful thought, especially if you're a young guy, you're not solidified, maybe you haven't been great with your money. Those are all things that can really, put a family in dire need. Because I remember a lot of people, just when we didn't have benefits, were giving birth to kids, and it was like, well, where's the money going to come from, or how am I going to pay for it? And so it is good in a sense of having some security and knowing that you'll have an opportunity to work and make a team.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned the coronavirus, and I did want to ask you about that with free agency here. It looks like the league year is going to roll on without a delay or anything like that.
Right.
How do you think, is that going to hamper? I know we can negotiate on phones and,
right.
conferences and everything, but how much of a change do you think that's going to be, that guys aren't visiting or, physicals and all that stuff?
Yeah, I think, well, we've been in contact and trying to figure out the best logistical way of doing it. And so I think from like what you mentioned from a physical standpoint, there's ways to work around that too. Most people live in a city where they can get to a doctor, they can do x-rays, they can do MRIs. If you've had any injuries that players have had or would give a team caution about, right? And then you can easily upload that to your electronic medical records and then publish that, so every team has access to where you're at health-wise. And so I don't see that being a barrier. It's all about whether or not, how do we come to an agreement and implement that. That won't be an issue. I think the only issue I can really see because obviously we don't want our men flying with the coronavirus going on, expose themselves and potentially their families. The only issue I can see in if free agency is not pushed back, is teams like a Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
Teams like that, or a team may have a new head coach, and obviously money normally trumps everything. But if money is close,
Right.
If you go up to Buffalo, and I'm just picking that because they're normally in the media for people turning them down. The way the culture has been shifted and changed up there, if you go up there and visit, you would have a much different perspective of maybe wanting to sign with them versus signing with like a team like I don't know, say the Patriots that are in a similar climate area as far as things to do, whatever, whoever, Cleveland or whatever you want to name. And so I think it may hurt teams more than players in that regard. But at the end of the day, I just hope that the NFL, does it the best and safe way. And then I think also with free agency, I don't really think they want to push it, because if they push free agency, then you have to think about starting to push the draft.
Right.
And just the way, things work in our world, it's about, okay, then what does that mean for our bottom line? What does that mean for our sponsorships and dollars if we start moving things and trying to realign things? And that's just what it is. Is it the right way to think about it? I don't know. But as long as we're putting our men's safety, first, I think I'm good with whatever decision they make, if it's done in the best way as far as not exposing our guys to this virus.
Gotcha. Now, what about then? You talk about the draft. I'm thinking about guys that they had good combines, but maybe going on those draft visits would help cement things a little bit more, because there were some coaches, Sean McVay and his coaches, the Broncos coaches, they left the combine, didn't do a lot of interviews because they said we'll be able to meet with guys face to face when they come for our draft visits. Now that's gone. So what's the way around that there? And do you think that that'll hurt kids? Like maybe a Jalen Hurts who isn't a top quarterback, but isn't a bottom tier and could face to face.
Yeah, those are the guys that's gonna hurt. I think more so kind of like your later rounds. If you're a top round pick, you know what you're getting out of a guy, and kind of speak to the Rams' perspective of what they did. I guess that's a great lesson that tomorrow isn't promised. Mm-hmm. And when you have your opportunity, take advantage of it and do your work when you can, and don't assume that everything will be fine in the future. And that's just with anything that you're doing in life. But I think it is what it is at this point. You have to kind of rest on the game film that you put out there, the combine. If you was fortunate to go to the combine, put that out there, and it's definitely going to be a different draft. But I think every year, teams or guys are impacted, based on how they work out, not going to the combine, and then taking visits. And even if you're taking visits, normally you are a top tier guy, and they pretty much know who you are and what you do. Okay. They've done a lot of ramp up interviews going back to your, really starting at the end of your junior year. So there's a lot of information on guys. Maybe if you have a GM and head coach or organization that is kind of stuck between two guys, it may make an issue. But at the end of the day, I think both players at least will get drafted, probably high if it comes down to something like that.
All right, Zoe, well, I really appreciate your insight. It's going to be interesting to see with this. I mean, we got some teams' off-season workout programs are supposed to start in a couple of weeks, but we don't know what's going to happen there. But
I doubt that happens.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and hopefully things slow down a little bit for you so you can soak up, and start enjoying that retirement life. But I know you're always active. You're always going to be into something, I imagine.
Yeah, appreciate you, brother. Yeah, I'm always doing something, starting with the family at the house, but you'll see me around.
Yep. Good deal. All right, Zoe, thanks so much for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon.
I appreciate you, bro.
All right. Really appreciate Lorenzo Alexander coming on. Very gracious with his time. I don't know about you, but I learned something from him every single time I talk to him, and it's been that way for, 10, 11 years. When I first started covering the Redskins, at the time, it was a website that's defunct, tbd.com. But he was the first interview I did, and I learned a whole lot about the team and the breakdown and everything like that. And so then as I went to the Washington Post, I always knew if I was trying to learn something about the team, about the league, Lorenzo was a guy to go to, stand-up guy, would always break it down very clearly. And so nothing has changed. He's still a go-to guy. Hope you learned a lot there just about kind of the inner workings of the CBA, and also that, look, the work's not done. Yes, the CBA is agreed to, but it's, like he said, a living, breathing document, and they'll try to find concessions here and there from the owners and continue to take care of their guys as they continue to push forward. And so, again, appreciate him coming on, and we'll see how everything plays out. The franchise tag deadline today, the legal tampering window begins today, which is Monday, and then on Wednesday, for now, is when free agent signings are supposed to begin to take place at 4 p.m. On Wednesday, and we'll see how teams work around this. If the travel restrictions do hamper efforts, or if they find a way to get everything done. But anyway, hope you have a great day. Please download this episode, grab a link, and send it out to some friends. Post it on social media even, and go on there, leave a review, and I will keep you posted. Talk to you next week. We'll talk about the latest free agency moves and what else is going on with the coronavirus and how it affects the NFL. Again, you can read me at usatoday.com. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram @ByMikeJones. Thanks. Have a great day and be safe out there.